We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Sunday night edition, Shedeur Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Shedeur Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. For late April, we have ourselves a ton to talk about here on a Sunday night Shedeur Torres Pod. People, hope everybody had a great weekend, but we have a lot to get into. We're going to open. Listen, I don't think it's just the biggest story of the draft, but it's one of, I think, going to be the biggest stories of 2025 in sports. Shedeur Sanders falling from the top 10 to the 5th round. I think there's two separate conversations. What happened, but equally as important, what kind of role can he play with the Browns? Because I'll tell you this, as bad as the fall was, a little bit of a soft landing spot considering it was the 5th round. So we'll discuss that. From there, we will get to some college hoops. You know, transfer portal is just about done. I think it's time to at least do version 1 of our biggest winners of the transfer portal. We'll talk about a bunch of teams, really. St. John's, we'll talk about Kentucky, we'll talk about Louisville, Michigan, on and on. From there, we'll get to some hoops from the weekend. Richie Saunders officially back at BYU. I'm here to tell you, them Cougs, you know, Torres is Cougar crazy. Those Cougs could be a national title contender. And we got to get to this story about Kentucky, where apparently they spent $20 million on their roster. Is the story true? How accurate is it? What do you need to know? Oh, we're going to discuss it all. Before we get started, a couple quick things, including an announcement. One, make sure that you are subscribed to the Shedeur Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day on YouTube as we have surpassed 55,000 subscribers. We're actually closer to 56,000 at this point. So can we get to 60,000 before the end of April? I'm not putting it past you guys because you guys are a great community. Also, make sure to subscribe to the podcast. Producer Matt has already pinned that to the top of the YouTube chat. Do me a favor. If you're not subscribed, click there, subscribe, download a couple podcasts for your boy Torres. Really does help with the podcast, downloads and advertisers and things of that nature. So, go ahead and do that. Before we get started, I do actually have one other announcement that I just want to get to really quick. It's something I've been chewing on for a while. So give me half a second to explain what I'm doing in a little bit of a new phase of the Shedeur Torres Pod and Shedeur Torres Pod YouTube channel, okay? So basically, we're blowing up on YouTube. I hate to brag. I think we give you as good a content as basically anybody in the college sports space. We do it 365 days a year, year-round, 52 weeks a year, whatever. I've noticed that the big YouTube channels, Shannon Sharp, who's certainly been in the headlines, but his YouTube channel, Pat McAfee, on and on, they have what's called a little bit of a membership subscriber thing. Membership, I think, is the best way to put it, like a YouTube membership. And it offers everybody exclusive opportunities, things involved with those creators. And so I bring it up because we are going to put that in here on the Shedeur Torres Pod and Shedeur Torres Pod YouTube channel on YouTube. If you want to become a member of the Shedeur Torres Pod community, all you got to do, go to the homepage or literally any video. There's a little button that says join. All you got to do is click there, join. I will tell you this, it is a little bit of a fee. The way that I look at it, one, I totally understand everybody right now is being spread thin with money and dollars and this and that. I get it. NIL is wearing everybody thin. But the way I look at it is pretty straightforward, is this is not any situation for me to get rich or whatever. The bottom line is it's just to put money back into the show to do more stuff. I have so many of you reach out and say, Torres, when are you coming to Lexington? Torres, when are you coming to stores? You were in Tucson. Are you coming back to Provo? And it's like, this is the kind of thing that we need to do to kind of keep this show growing, keep opportunities growing, things like that. I will tell you this. In May, we have an interview with one of the biggest names in college basketball. We are flying out to go ahead and do that. I don't want to give away too many secrets yet, but I bring it up because this is a 100% independently owned operation. We don't get money from CBS or ESPN or Yahoo or Fox or whatever when we want to go on the road and do stuff. And so I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to this. I'm not going to that. But if you want to support the show, it's $5 a month. The way I look at it, I went to Starbucks the other day. It was like $6 for a small coffee. So it's basically one Starbucks cup of coffee a month. If you want to support the show in any manner, we would truly appreciate it. As far as what you get, just a couple thoughts on that. One, we're going to figure it out as we go. Are there exclusive, live chats, AMAs, ask me anything, like stuff like that? Are there going to be pieces of content that may be exclusive to subscribers? We'll see about that. I think there's definitely going to be some sort of merch discount or basically, promo where basically if you're a member, you're basically getting stuff for free. So you want that Big Pig Invasion tee, might be worth it just to sign up as a member. You want that Hope and Pope t-shirt, etc. But again, all you got to do, go to on YouTube, just click the join tab right there. It's $4.99 a month. I think it's the best deal going in sports because the bottom line is we are going to keep bringing you great content. We're going to go on the road. We're going to do cool stuff, but we cannot do it without your support. So with that said, that was the big announcement of the day. There is no more time to waste, though. So let's get to what is actually the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, we're going to get to a lot of hoops here in just a moment. But before we get to hoops, though, there is one football story from the weekend. And we always say this with the NFL draft. We do a lot of college football on this show. For the thousands of you who have found this podcast in the last 2-3 months, we do talk a lot of college football. But this isn't a show that we spend a month talking about the draft and the day after we're doing, like, that's not what we're about. If you need an Atlanta Falcons draft grade, this isn't the show. But if there's a big story that happens, we're going to cover it. And I'll tell you this, I don't think there is a bigger story in sports right now. And I would argue, I think this is going to go down. When we look back at the end of 2025, the biggest stories in sports in 2025, I think Shedeur Sanders' NFL draft fall will be among the top ones. This was a kid, when the process started, we thought could go number 1 overall. Going into draft night, I think people thought that he could go, probably the floor, as in the worst case scenario, was 21 to the Steelers, and he could still go in the top 10, maybe to the Saints, maybe to the New York Giants. He falls to the 144th overall pick. For those of you scoring at home, that's in the 5th round of the draft. So what ended up happening? Because I think what I want to do now, just spend a few minutes. There are 2 different conversations in my mind. What happened? But also, what is the fit for Shedeur now that we know that he's a Cleveland Brown? Because to me, I actually think the fit is pretty good. So in terms of what happened, so first of all, if you missed it on the YouTube channel, we did a standalone segment on Shedeur Sanders. The audio audience got a full pod preview talking about the first round of the NFL draft. But I'll be honest, I was somebody that thought he was going to go in the first round. And so we did a reaction on the first round slide. And I'll tell you this, I actually thought pretty quickly it could go sideways for Shedeur in the second round, because to me, something pretty significant happened early in the second round that indicated to me that, this might be more serious than we thought. And it was basically that he didn't go in the first pick or 2 of the second round. If you follow the NFL draft, what you know, the 33rd pick is actually like one of the most coveted spots in the NFL draft. First round ends, 32 picks. And then you have a full day, if you're in the 33rd spot, to listen to trade offers. And if there's somebody that somebody wants, they're fighting and clawing to get into that 33rd spot. A few years ago, listen, we can say whatever we want about Will Levis, how it ended up with the Titans, but teams were fighting to get into that spot. Will Levis was the first pick of the second round to the Tennessee Titans. Last year, Keon Coleman, first pick of the second round, the Bills traded up to get him. So when there were no teams seemingly fighting to trade up, and then when the Cleveland Browns, who needed a quarterback, apparently 2, ended up passing on him, you're like, this might get really bad. But I'll be real, there was no scenario where I saw him falling completely out of day 2. And as we talk about what happened, listen, I'll be real. 1, I'll just own it. I was dead wrong. I was old takes exposed on Thursday night. I thought he was going to go somewhere in the top 10. Again, I thought the floor was the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the question now becomes, what ended up happening? Why did it go so sideways? And to me, I really think it's kind of a perfect storm for Shedeur. I feel bad for him. I know a lot of people don't have sympathy for him. Whatever, you're allowed your opinion. I think it's really kind of a perfect storm of a bunch of stuff that worked against him. I think, 1, listen, maybe everybody just overrated him as a prospect. I personally, I'll tell you, I thought he was the best quarterback I saw in college football this past year. You can argue with me. You can fight with me. Indisputable facts. 74% completion percentage, 37 touchdowns, all Big 12 first team top 10 in the Heisman. By the end of Friday night, I think people were talking about this guy as if he was basically, you know what they were talking about him like he was Bronny James. Like he was only on the field at Colorado because his dad was the head coach. And all I'll say is, listen, there are 12 team coaches that vote on the all Big 12 first team, okay? Most of them put Shedeur as the best quarterback in the league that year. Heisman voters all over the country determined that in college football, he was one of the 10 best players in the country. But I do think as the draft process wore on, the concerns started to become greater. The arm strength. The fact that, listen, I even said on Friday night or Thursday night, I'll own it. 74% completion percentage. He did take a lot of sacks, though. I mean, holds on the ball a little bit too long. I think you should be able to coach that out of him, whatever. But those are all the reasons why. And then I think there's a couple other variables. One, I think it's worth noting, it appears as though the interview process just did not go well. Now, I told you on Thursday night, if you watch that segment, I talked to somebody this weekend, or I talked to somebody on Thursday that was in the building with him every single day this past year. They said, no issues, great kid, teammates loved him, whatever. But what I can't deny, you don't go from top 10 potentially to the 5th round if you don't turn some people off, okay? So whatever happened in the interviews, I think it's sort of irrelevant now. I actually thought Shedeur handled it well in the post, the post everything, where he was asked about this at a press conference on Saturday night, and he basically said, it doesn't matter what impression I made on any other team. What matters is that the Cleveland Browns like me, and now I'm ready to prove, Mr. Stefanski and Mr. Berry correct. Was he humble a little bit? I think he probably was. But I think there's no doubt that hurt him. And then what I think really hurt him is a combination of two things. There just weren't that many teams that needed quarterbacks. And then on top of it, I think even some of the teams that maybe would have considered him like as a backup, maybe the Los Angeles Rams, maybe the Seattle Seahawks who drafted Jalen Milroe, I think they just didn't think they were ever going to be in a position to actually draft him. And so you start to wonder, would there have been a team or two that may have been interested but just assumed he was going to be off the board in the top 10 and they'd never have a chance to draft him? So it is a crazy slide. It is a crazy fall. But I also don't think it changes the fact that, I'll be real, I think this was a pretty good landing spot for Shedeur Sanders at the next level. Now, listen, we're going to find out if he's good enough. But first off, I was thinking about this after the draft, and it sounds kind of crazy, but when you really actually break it down, what kind of stood out to me thinking about this draft? The number of teams that both needed a quarterback, but actually, let me put it, there's a difference between a team that needs a quarterback for their roster, but then also a team that actually has the opportunity to play for your team next year, okay? So I'll give you an example. The Indianapolis Colts are going to figure out Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, whatever. But they drafted Riley Leonard late just because they need another body on their roster. Philadelphia Eagles added Kyle McCord late because they need another body on their roster. But the number of teams that are actually going to that drafted a quarterback who might actually play this year, I counted a grand total of 4. And that's kind of being actually, pretty nice about it. 1, Tennessee Titans, that goes without saying. It doesn't feel like Shedeur was ever really in the mix there. 2, maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers. We don't know what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. So do the Steelers have a starting opening or not? Is Mason Rudolph the guy? Is it going to be Aaron Rodgers? The Steelers, you feel like, may have an opening, but we don't even know that for sure yet. And we might not know it for another month or 2, depending on what Aaron Rodgers wants to do on some ayahuasca retreat as we speak. So we have no idea with Aaron Rodgers. The 3rd team is the New Orleans Saints. Now they claim that Derek Carr is going to be their starter. We'll see what ends up happening there. But I just bring it up because you just don't know if there's actually going to be an opening for a quarterback to actually see the field on that team. And then every other team is basically set. New England Patriots have Drake May, even the bad teams. New England Patriots have Drake May. Denver Broncos drafted a quarterback. They weren't bad. They were in the playoffs, but you get the point. The Jets are rolling with Justin Fields. Even the Giants, they drafted Jackson Dart, but Russell Wilson's going to be their starter week 1. And so you actually look at the teams that will have an opportunity for a quarterback to go in and win the job. It's basically the Tennessee Titans and maybe the Cleveland Browns, and that's basically it. And you look at that depth chart, and all of a sudden, I'll tell you what, I think there's a scenario where not only does Shedeur Sanders play, I think he plays early if he's actually good enough, okay? And so you look at this depth chart here, and producer Matt, I appreciate you having that ready to go. 5 quarterbacks in that room. And by the way, I know all of you know this. You've read every blog and website and probably watched a lot of YouTube content at this point. But 5 quarterbacks: Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and oh, by the way, Dylan Gabriel, who was drafted before Shedeur Sanders, which I don't understand, but that's another conversation for another day. But that's the QB room that Shedeur Sanders is walking in. Well, Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles, October, November? Listen, Deshaun Watson is a questionable character at best. I'm not personally rooting for injuries for him, but he ain't coming back from an Achilles this season. Joe Flacco, I love him. He's 40 years old. He ain't built for a 17-game season, especially in the AFC North with that Baltimore defense coming after him and TJ Watt in Pittsburgh. Even if he's the day one starter or he's the presumed starter going into camp, he ain't going to make it 18 weeks. I hope, I'm not rooting for injury. I'm just stating he's 40 years old. That's a tough division. Dylan Gabriel's good. He's not better than Shedeur. I'm sorry, he just isn't. And Kenny Pickett, I don't even think is very good. I think in a best case scenario, he was the backup to begin with. I think Shedeur is better than him. And so listen, how good is Shedeur? We're going to find out. I'm going to stand by what I said. He was the best quarterback I saw in college this year, at least NFL ready quarter in terms of guys that I thought could step in. Does Drew Aller maybe have a higher upside at Penn State? Sure. Does Cade Klubnik have a higher upside at Clemson? Sure. But they're not in the NFL draft. Arch Manning is not in this draft. And so of the guys that could have conceivably been able to be drafted, I thought Shedeur was the best. Now it's kind of on him to prove everybody wrong. And I think that's the closing thought I would have on this subject, on this topic, is whether you like Shedeur or not. If you thought he needed to be humbled, this feels like the thing that should do it, right? This feels like the thing that should do it. Again, whatever happened in the in the process to get to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever happened in those interview rooms, I don't know. I mean, listen, I have speculation. I've talked to a few people. Nobody said anything super cryptic to me about how bad he was or anything like that. But if he needed to be humbled, this feels like a good piece of humble pie for him to eat. You go from a presumed, when the season ended, I think everybody thought he was going in the top 10. It was just a matter of where, to now a 5th round pick in the 2025 NFL draft. Obviously not how you wanted the draft to go. Obviously you wouldn't have minded being a Brown. You would have hoped it was 5 rounds, 4 rounds sooner and you were a top 3 pick. But at the end of the day, I think it could have gone much worse. Shedeur Sanders is a Cleveland Brown. And I'm telling you, I put out a tweet on Saturday. If he does things well, I think he's your starter by December 1st. I really, truly do. I think they're going to give Joe Flacco the nod. I think Joe Flacco's frankly not going to be good enough. The division's too tough. And I think by, mid to late November, they're just going to have to see what they have in Shedeur if Shedeur is actually good enough. So we'll see what happens, but Shedeur Sanders is a Cleveland Brown, and we will see what the impact is from there. All right, I appreciate everybody. The chat is humming. We're going to get to some hoops in a second. By the way, producer Matt, if you have any thoughts, questions, concerns, anything interesting in the comments section, we'll do it on the other side. But this is what we are going to do. We're going to come back. When we come back, we're going to talk college hoops. College hoops, transfer portal stuff starting to slow down a little bit. Question becomes, who is still available? But more importantly, I think it's time that we can officially start talking winners and losers. So we're going to take a quick break, come back, talk transfer portal winners and losers. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Maura Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres podcast question. All right, everybody. All right, back. Good to be back. So drop your comments in the comment section. By the way, I had something else I wanted to say. Oh, producer Matt, when we're looking for stuff to do in the middle of the week, remind Torres that I got to update that merch promo. Mike F. and Woodson t-shirts are, they're free 99. If anybody wants one, you let me know. The Mike F. and Woodson, I think, is officially out of print. So we'll get an updated merch promo here in the coming days. With that said, we do want to switch gears to the portal. But before we get to the portal, there is something else we do want to discuss. We do want to discuss our favorite partner. We are, of course, talking about Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Okay, so I've told you Cauley Puffs story. Great story, by the way. Love working with Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, the owner, huge sports fan, huge football fan, was part of the Torres Survivor Pool Challenge a few months ago when we started March Madness. But I bring it up because he was sitting on the couch one day watching games, and he was sitting there saying, I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious. I need something that my kids are going to like, but also that I'm going to like as well. And so he came up with Cauley Puffs. Cauley Puffs are the new age alternative to the crap in your grocery aisle. You don't need the Doritos. You don't need the Fritos. It's that time of year. You need to get in shape. Beach season's coming, baby. Lake season's coming. Shirtless barbecue in the backyard season is coming. So you need snacks that are healthy and delicious. Cauley Puffs is your answer. Baked, not fried. Avocado oil, no grease. Healthy ingredients. But the best part is they taste freaking delicious. Okay, I appreciate everybody who has tried out Cauley Puffs because the reviews have been awesome. I know so many of you have tried them out. We appreciate your support. And for more information or to try them out for yourselves, all you got to do, visit CauleyPuffs.com. That's CauleyPuffs.com. CauleyPuffs.com. You can also get them on Amazon.com. So you got a cart open. You're buying stuff for the house. You're buying stuff for the man cave. You're buying stuff for the apartment. Whatever. Throw some Cauley Puffs in there. Trust me, you'll like them. Tell them Torres sent you. We appreciate your support. Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to switch gears. So listen, big topic on this show the last, 6 weeks? Well, 5 weeks, because the portal opened a little over a month ago. We have talked college hoops transfer portal basically every episode since the second week of March when it officially opened. It's not quite closed yet. It's closed. There's still some difference makers in there. Darian Reed is still technically in there. Darion Williams is still technically in there. Desmond Claude, RJ Lewis, on and on. We'll see some of the guys are going through the NBA draft process. Some of them are just in the portal looking for a home. Andrei Stojakovic, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think it's time to at least do the first iteration of college hoops transfer portal winners, understanding that stuff is still going to change into April as the draft deadlines come and go, as the NBA draft process comes and goes. But what I want to do now is go ahead and give my first edition, maybe my only edition, of college hoops transfer portal's biggest winners. Now, a couple caveats before we get started on this list. I do want to go ahead and start by saying a couple things. Is that one, like I said, I still think there's 4, 5, 6 difference makers ahead. Andrei Stojakovic is down to UNC, Illinois, and Stanford. I think he certainly would put North Carolina on a second iteration of this list. Will Wade is still big game hunting. Darion Reed, Darian Williams at the 4. So we're going to do a second version of this list, but this is the first one. And I think the other important thing that I do want to mention, I want to focus on schools that really had major holes to fill, okay? So we're not going to talk about, say, a BYU, who we're going to get to in a minute because BYU had some news over the weekend. BYU, the story of their offseason was not going to be what they did in the portal. It was going to be, could they get Richie Saunders back? Could they get Cabe Akeda back? Could they get AJ DeBonce to campus? They did all three. So they did well in the portal, but they didn't have as many holes to fill. It's the same with UConn. UConn only has taken 2 players. They're key players, but I wouldn't call them a winner because I just don't think they had the volume that they needed to fill. Same with Arkansas, same with a few others. So enough nonsense, enough riffraff. Let's get into it. The teams that I believe have been college hoops' biggest portal winners so far. Number one, in my opinion, I don't want to say there's only one team that you could put here, but they're the most obvious one. How about my boy Rick Pitino and Big Rick Energy, baby? St. John's is number one in my transfer portal biggest winners. And listen, I'm not alone. 24/7 Sports has them as the number one transfer portal class right now. And it's sort of amazing what he did in the portal. First of all, moved very quickly once the season ended. Bryce Hopkins, we've talked about him, began his career at Kentucky, really blossomed at Providence, unfortunately dealt with some injury issues, tried to come back this year, averaged like 17 points per game this season, but it was only in a couple games played. He ends up taking he ends up taking a red shirt. He's eligible. He immediately adds scoring to a St. John's team that needs it. By the way, makes a very interesting front court with Zuby Ejiofor, who is returning. Beyond him, Josan Sanan, we've talked about him, former 5-star recruit, was at Arizona State, good three-point shooter, athletic wing. Now he's coming to St. John's. I believe he's actually put his name in the NBA draft process. I believe after a year with Rick Pitino, he is going to be an NBA player, maybe 2 years, but whatever. And so those were the two early additions. Then it's about what he has done in the last couple of days, because there was literally, about a 4 or 5 day stretch where they got a commitment every single day. St. John's fans were calling it the Mega Haul, and they largely delivered on that. The big one, we all know, Ian Jackson, former 5-star, comes back to New York City. He's from New York City originally, played at UNC this year. Listen, I know he wasn't perfect at UNC, but guess what? He was a freshman playing in the ACC, averaged 12 points on 41% three-point shooting. We've been over the fact that at various points he was one of the best players in the ACC. Struggled late. I think he's going to thrive in his second year. Ozias Sellers is a very nice player. He's not going to be great for you, but can get you probably 10, 12 points a game. And if he's your 6th, 7th guy, that's great. Dylan Mitchell, former McDonald's All-American. Now, I don't think he's a scorer as much as kind of a wing defender. Crazy athlete. And then most recently, by the way, Dylan Darling is a player to know. He transferred in from Idaho State, averaged 19 points per game. He's probably going to play the point guard position. And so when I look at St. John's, this is what stands out. This is crazy to me. Just went 31-5, excuse me. Won the Big East regular season, won the Big East conference tournament. No, it didn't go well in the NCAA tournament. But I'm looking at this roster. This roster is deeper. This roster is a much better shooting team. And as importantly, it is as athletic as last year, because, you don't want to sacrifice the athleticism that you had just to bring in more skill and more scoring, because we know Pitino, he has no patience for a guy that's not an athlete. Go back and look at what he said last year with some of the stuff that he said when things were going sideways. So I love this class. By the way, as always, our Torres on SJU account, Torres on SJU, for all your late-breaking portal news. We really do appreciate your support. Torres on SJU. By the way, I see the Arizona comment, producer Matt. I see you have that starred. Let's get to that at the end. That ruffled some Torres feathers here, but we'll get to them in a minute. All right. Number 2, most impressive portal class. I'll be honest. Dusty May, to quote the old Shaq meme, Dusty May, I was not familiar with your game. The Michigan Wolverines are number 2 in my biggest portal winners. Okay. So like I said, Dusty May, he's at Florida Atlantic. He likes to put up this whole vibe of, I ride my bike to work and I'm just a normal guy, put my pants on one leg at a time. Well, you are a normal guy that's got a wad of cash and you are throwing it around in the portal. But here's the more important thing, getting good players that are difference makers at the college basketball level. Michigan brought in unbelievable groups of talent. First of all, we're going to get to the really big names in a minute, but I think the piece that is going to be the glue that holds them together is Elliot Cadeau, the point guard from UNC. Listen, I know that it was a 5-star. I know it really worked out. He also did average 10 points, 6 assists, and was a much improved three-point shooter in the ACC last year. That's not to say that he's ever going to live up to 5-star. He'll never be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft. But a guy that averaged 10 points, 6 assists, playing with the dudes that he's going to next year, I think he can be an all Big Ten point guard. I really do. But let's get to the big names. The biggest one, I haven't done official portal player rankings yet. I'll maybe work on them this week. But I will say Yaxel Lenenberg's the best player that entered the portal as far as I'm concerned this year. We talked about him at the time. I told you, like, I know of coaching staffs that were literally just refreshing the portal, hoping that he got in, and basically, basically raising funds and putting themselves in position to potentially get him. 18 points, 11 boards per game, 4.5 assists, 2 rebounds, or 2 steals, 2 blocks per game. He was the best player, in my opinion, in the portal. Now, the important part with him, with Yaxel, is he's going through the NBA draft process. He's a little bit older. I believe he's 23. I could be mistaken on that, but 6'9" forward. And I think if he gets the right opportunity, he's going to go pro. Going to start that clock, whatever. But I'll tell you this, if the numbers on Michigan are accurate, he is going to be very handsomely compensated. And I do think even at his age, I think he could improve his draft stock because he is going to thrive in that Dusty May system, kind of in the same role that Danny Wolf was in last year. So you have Yaxel Lenenberg. You have Merez Johnson, a player that I like. We've talked about him. The stats don't blow you away, but he only played about 19 and a half minutes per game this year at Illinois. He was basically a double-double machine if you played him, 28, 30 minutes a game. And then the last one I'll say, Adai Mara. He was a guy that when he came to college basketball was a player that we were talking about as a one-and-done lottery pick. It didn't quite work out that way. It's not to say, though, that he can't still be both a really good college basketball player, but maybe as importantly, a really, 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 really good difference maker at Michigan. So I am so excited to see how this all plays out. But Michigan, to me, listen, St. John's, I think they're a top 5 team going into next year. I think Michigan is as well. Let's keep it going. A team that has certainly been in the headlines the last couple days because of reports about how much they spent, which we'll talk about later in the show. It's the Kentucky Wildcats. Listen, let me just say this, Kentucky fans, I don't care how much you spent. I don't care how much UConn spent. I don't care how much BYU spent. Go get yourself some dogs, and that's exactly what Kentucky did. And the thing with Kentucky, I think I give Mark Pope credit for this. Last year was very aggressive in bringing together an older roster. 7 guys that in theory were out of eligibility after this past year. Now, Kirk Kriisa got another year because he had an unfortunate injury, but you knew you were going to have big swaths of guys to replace. So you knew going in you were going to have to replace basically your entire roster. But what I love about what Mark Pope did was he both replaced the roster, but I think upgraded it as well. Remember, last year doesn't get the job till about April 13th, 14th, somewhere in there. Doesn't get his first commitment till April 22nd. This year was able to be aggressive early. He gets Cam Williams from Tulane, and then it was game on from there. Jalen Lowe, the point guard from Pitt. Mo Diabate, the forward from Alabama. The big one, the big man, Jaden Quaintance, who I think was one of the 2 or 3 best big men in the portal. And he wrapped a few days ago with Denzel Aberdeen. Listen, we've talked about Kentucky so much. I don't know that I need to dive like crazy deep into this class. And we're going to talk about them again because of the rumors about how much they spent. But what I would say with Kentucky is that, to me, what stands out is that Mark Pope not only replaced a lot of players, but I think he fixed a hole in last year's team where I just don't think they were athletic enough. I've said it a million times, but they got on the court late in the season. A couple injuries happen. All of a sudden, you're playing guys you weren't anticipating. You could see the difference with Kentucky and Tennessee in the Sweet 16. You could see the difference with Kentucky and Alabama in the SEC tournament. You could see the difference between Kentucky and Auburn when they played it at Rupp Arena late in the year. And so you needed to upgrade the athleticism. I'm never going to blame a coach for, first year in the SEC, had to put together a roster on the fly, 0 returning players. But I think he has not only put together almost a completely new roster. I know there's still a few returnees, but I think it's a better one top to bottom. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, Otega Owe is the big name. Is he going to stay in the draft or not? I assume he comes back, but I love what Mark Pope has done this season. Let's keep it going. Let's stay in the same state. And I've said it. Pat Kelsey, he's another one. I would sit there and say I was not familiar with Pat Kelsey's game before he got to Louisville. Okay, and so what stands out to me about Pat Kelsey is he was a guy that I think kind of sort of got lost in the shuffle this time last year with all of the big coaching changes. He gets hired early, he gets to work. Louisville's a disaster, whatever. And then Mark Pope gets hired, and then Calipari, he's at Arkansas. What does that mean? Musselman's at USC. What does that mean? Who's this Kevin Young guy? And we just forgot about Pat Kelsey. Puts together a great team on the fly last offseason. On top of that, and I think this is the important part, puts together a team that is the second best team in the ACC. I forget if they were the 2 or the 3, but whatever. Would they go 18-2 in the ACC? That's freaking absurd. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. They got screwed by the committee. Should have never been in an 8-9 game, even if it was in Rupp Arena. But I bring it up because the offseason ends, and Pat Kelsey gets to work, and he gets to work early. Change it, completely flips the backcourt. Well, he didn't flip it. He lost Chucky Hepburn. He lost Terrence Edwards. He did a great job. I think he felt like he had to be aggressive early. He got a couple kids on campus and didn't let them leave. The names to know, obviously, Adrian Woolley is a guy. Listen, I thought that he was maybe a little bit underrated. And then I looked at 24/7's rankings, and they have him as like a top 10, top 12 player in the entire portal process. He is a very good player. He's good for this reason, because of the fact that he is from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Alabama wanted him bad, and Louisville was able to get him. This was a player that played at Kennesaw State. Did I just mention that? I forget if I did. But he played at Kennesaw State. A true freshman, by the way. These are stats from a true freshman. 18.5 points, 18.8 points per game, 3.6 assists per game, 5.2 rebounds, 42% three-point shooting. And so he's a guy that is going to step up. He's going to have success, but he is also, in theory, a multi-year player that is going to get better and better as things go on. Also, besides him, Ryan Conwell. I love Ryan Conwell. I was a little worried this time last year about him stepping up from Indiana State to Xavier. He averaged 16 points per game on 41% three-point shooting. I think he's fine. He's going to be a killer. Isaac McNeely, elite three-point shooter, one of the best in the country. He is going to Louisville. So you add those guys in with the guys that are returning, Javon Hadley, Keyshawn Pryor. You bring in Mikal Brown Jr., the kid from Germany. I apologize. I don't know how to say his name, but he is a very good prospect as well. Louisville's a beast, dude. I have at number 9 in my too early top 25. I might have to reconsider before I drop it later this week. Number 5, I'm going to go a little bit off the radar here with my next portal, winner. I'm going to go with the Iowa Hawkeyes. Okay, so Iowa, don't forget about Iowa. So Iowa, of course, remember, fired Fran McCaffrey. They've kind of just been in the doldrums of college hoops, and they've been fine, but they haven't had the moment. I don't think they've made a Sweet 16 since either 99 or 2000. Never clicked under Fran McCaffrey, even when he had Luka Garza, even when he had the Murray brothers. So they fire him. Ben McCollum, Iowa's native son, comes in, and right away he has quietly put together a very good team. The headline player, of course, is Bennett Sturts, who followed him from Drake. Listen, I think there's going to be questions about, can he translate up to the highest levels of college basketball? Came with Ben McCollum from Northwest Missouri, D2 to Drake, ends up being the Missouri Valley Player of the Year. My guess is if you're going to be the Missouri Valley Player of the Year, you're going to be fine in the Big Ten, average 19 points per game, 42% three-point shooting. A couple other guys from Drake that followed, but I think from there, the big name that I really want to focus on, you can see it on the screen there, Alvaro, I apologize, Fulgaris. Okay, Alvaro Fulgaris. Okay, so he was a kid that was recruited by Kentucky, recruited by a bunch of different schools. Robert Morris transfer, NEC Player of the Year, originally from Spain. He's a perfect fit for that system. 6'9", 6'10", 14 points per game, 41% three-point shooter. I mean, listen, McCollum's system, everybody's got to be able to pass, dribble, shoot. He can do all three of them. Like I said, 41% three-point shooter from a 6'9", 6'10 guy. That's not bad. The other name that I really like, Brennan Howson, quietly had a good year in a pretty chaotic situation for Kansas State. And so I think this team's going to be really good. I don't know that I'm quite ready yet to say they're in the way too early top 25. But if I was doing like a way too early top 35, I think they're probably in there. They still need a couple pieces, but they're going to be a beast. They're going to be tough in the Big Ten. Big Ten's going to be good next year. Michigan's going to be good. Purdue's going to be good. Indiana, which we'll get into in a half a second, is going to be really good. But Iowa's going to be right there. Don't know if they're going to win the darn thing, but I think they're going to be pretty close. Couple other teams, I'll be quick on these. If you want to call them honorable mention or whatever. First one, Auburn Tigers. I got to give credit. They lose essentially everybody off this team. They're another one. They're like Kentucky, where they built their team very intentionally this past season with a bunch of 5th and 6th year guys, knowing Janai Broom, Chaney Johnson, Denver Jones, Miles Kelly, all these guys were going to run out of eligibility after this year. And I wondered, especially going to the Final Four, like how were they going to be able to, reload, because they had they were a week behind everybody else because they went to the Final Four. Turns out just fine. Keyshawn Hall commits to the program right before the Final Four. He was actually at the Final Four at a bunch of Auburn booster events. Told producer Matt, I think that was like a $1 million appearance that he made at the Final Four, because obviously everybody's paying kids trying to get the money in before the house settlement hits here in the next few weeks. But Keyshawn Hall was the leading scorer this past season in the Big 12 at UCF. He comes in. Elijah Freeman, he's that athletic 6'8" kid that played D2 last year at Lincoln Memorial. Everybody was on him. Tennessee was on him. Kentucky was on him early. It might take a minute, but he can play in the SEC. A couple other nice additions. I really like Keyshawn Murphy, the big man from Mississippi State. Now, listen, I understand that conference to conference, and he's a little bit limited in what he can do. But if you're just going to make him the 5 and tell him go rebound, go block shots, be athletic, I think he'll be successful. So I give Auburn a ton of credit there. Another team that we got to talk about, Indiana Hoosiers, Darren DeVries. I give him so much credit. This is a guy that took over a team. He's kind of this year's John Calipari. He's kind of this year's Mark Pope. Took over a team, had 0 returning players, right? What's the famous John Calipari line? I went to meet with the team. There was no team. That was Darren DeVries this year, okay? Because Darren DeVries takes over. Everybody's out. Listen, I think most of them he probably didn't want back. And I think he did a very good job of filling up this roster so far, and still think he probably has a spot or 2 to go. By the way, as always, make sure you're following our Torres on Indiana account for all your late-breaking news. Torres on Indiana. Shout out to our guy Caleb, who helps run that. As far as the big commitments at Indiana, I really love the Reed Bailey kid. When I do my portal rankings of best players, I think he's like a top 15 guy. 6'10" kid, played at Davidson last year, 18 points, 6 rebounds, 41% three-point shooting. I said it before. When Davidson hired Steph Curry as an assistant GM, it was with the express intention of, we can't lose guys like Reed Bailey. They lose them anyway, and that's not a knock on Davidson or Indiana or whatever. It's just, it's the new world. He wants to play in the Big Ten. I think he's going to be awesome. You see all these teams now with these stretch 5 guys that can all hit threes. He's going to be great in that system. The other big name there, guy we talked about a ton, Lamar Wilkerson. Yes, I got to take the L. Yes, I thought he was going to Kentucky. Yes, he ends up going to Indiana. 20.5 points per game, 44% shooting from behind the three-point arc. And then from there, I just think nice. By the way, Tucker DeVries, who of course followed Darren DeVries from West Virginia, played with him at Drake, and so he's a guy that's obviously very familiar. Got hurt this year, but he was shooting the crap out of the ball early in the season at West Virginia. Before he got hurt, was averaging 15 points a game on 47% three-point shooting. Only ended up playing 8 games, but when you're shooting 47% from 3 on 7 attempts per game, you know what the heck you're doing. And then what I actually really like about DeVries is that I think he's done a good job these last couple days of really backfilling with role players. I think sometimes we get so caught up in these superstar players that we get tripped up on, who's this guy from this mid-major school? And it's like, not everybody has to be a guy who averages 30 minutes a game. As a matter of fact, it can't be. And so really like the additions of the last couple of days. Florida's Sam Alexis. Remember, Sam Alexis was kind of an important player on the Florida team, had a couple double-doubles earlier in the year, gets hurt, gets kind of, other guys step up in his place. He's at Indiana, but it's proven he can play at the Power 5 level, Power 4 level. Also worth noting, Nick Dorn from Elon, 15 points a game, another three-point shooter. Listen, if he's the best player you sign all offseason, it's probably not great. But the counter to that is if he is a player that you sign, as the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th man on your team, that's actually a very good thing. So like what Indiana did, give them credit. They are certainly in the mix. Oh, by the way, a couple others before we get out of here. Creighton. I think we got to give Creighton credit. They lose Ryan Kalkbrenner. They lose a couple other key players. And I was kind of worried, like, how are you going to fill those spots? Well, Coach Mack does it again. Coach Mack's swan song, by the way. Alan Huss is in as their lead assistant. He is the coach in waiting. So we don't know if Greg McDermott has a year, 2, 3 years left. But Creighton is certainly in the mix. The big pieces of news there, Owen Freeman, Josh Dix, arguably the 2 best players at Iowa last year. McCaffrey leaves, so they are going to Creighton. I think Creighton right now is the clear third best team in the Big East behind St. John's and UConn, so credit to them. And then the last team, I know I said I wasn't going to focus on teams that didn't have major holes to fill, but I do think UCLA needed some star power, okay? I don't think that, yes, they didn't have as many spots to fill as some of these other places, but if they got a B+ at point guard, I think they're a pretty mid-level team. Well, they got an A+ instead in Donovan Dent. Donovan Dent is a rock star, 21 points per game, 42% three-point shooting, 6 assists per game. By the way, I'm doing these stats from memory at this point. I've talked about these guys so much. I think he was one of the 3 or 4 best players in the portal. I said it at New Mexico this year. He could have played anywhere in college basketball. If he was 6'5" instead of 6'3", not only is he in the NBA, he's a lottery pick probably a year ago. So just a star player. You add him with the guys that they have back. UCLA is in the mix. And lastly, let me just wrap by saying we're going to do an update on this list because, like I said, I think North Carolina has a piece to add. Florida appears to be in good position with Desmond Claude, the USC transfer. What's going to happen, by the way, again, at NC State, at a few of these other places, but those are the biggest portal winners of college hoops so far. All right, we're going to take one more break. When we come back, we're going to talk about 2 big stories. Richie Saunders back at BYU. I'm here to tell you, Torres is Cougar crazy, and I think the Cougars are a legitimate national championship contender. Also, Kentucky. We've all seen the report by now, $20 million reportedly for their roster. Is it true? What's true? What's not? How close is it? And does it even matter? We're going to take a quick break, discuss it all next. What's up, everybody? It's AT, and listen, long day of podcasting. Sometimes don't always look the best. So look at this. It's a little bit not great, okay? Well, here is the great news. The great people at FioBox said, Torres, you're a professional. You just got 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. You need to look better. And so they sent me a couple awesome things. I want to pull them out for you right now. This is all from the winter collection, by the way. Spring collection is coming out. We got the vest, very, very, very nice. The sweater, very professional for when I go to professional events. We got these nice blue jeans. I think the question now everybody's asking is, Torres, how do you actually look when you put that stuff on? Let's find out. Well, what do you think? Sweater fits perfectly. Great for all occasions. When I go to games, when I go out to a dinner, warm weather, cool weather, it's perfect. Speaking of perfect, these jeans are phenomenal. Great for games, great for social events. Oh, by the way, a little bit stretchy if those New Year's resolutions aren't going on as planned. Really quickly, we got to try out. Let's try out the vest. It fits perfectly. Not a surprise. So here's the deal. If you want to look as good as Torres, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to FioBoc.com. That's FIOBOC. FioBoc.com. And here's the best part. For listeners to the Aaron Torres pod, you get 20% off with code Torres20 at checkout. We also put a referral link in all of our YouTube videos. Thank you to FioBoc. By the way, make sure you're following them on social media at FIOBOC. Thank you to FioBoc. You want to look as good as Torres, check them out. Again, promo code Torres20. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. By the way, I see people commenting on my modeling skills. FioBoc.com, code Torres, 20% off your order. FioBoc.com. They got great stuff. By the way, we got some new stuff. I'll be making a new promo for that. Let me tell you, they got some good stuff for the spring. Matt, one portal question that caught my attention. Why don't you pop it up really quick? All right. So, Stut Joe, this is a great thing that I actually commented on. Field of 68 podcast voted Arizona as one of the top portal losers, and I think they have a point. What does Aaron think? Well, Stut, I hate to say this. I fundamentally disagree with you, and I fundamentally disagree with the Field of 68, okay? So now let me be clear. I always like to say this on this show. I'm not the type of person, I don't go after other media members unless they come after me. You know, I'm type, I don't start fights, but I will finish them if I have to. Field of 68 guys have been great to me. Saw Jeff at the Final Four, saw Rob at the Final Four. I love them. I got no beef with any of them, okay? So this is not a criticism of them. I did not love the take, though, that Arizona was a big portal loser, okay? So first of all, what did Arizona lose in the portal? Henry Visar, really good player, going to North Carolina. KJ Lewis, good player, although disappointing, leaves to go to Georgetown. What did they add in the portal? Well, basically nothing so far. So in theory, on paper, that makes them a portal loser. Here's the issue. Visar. I love Henry Visar. But they basically had 3 roster spots for 2 big guys, or really 4 roster spots for 3 big guys. Koa Pete is coming in as a 5-star. By the way, make sure you're following our Torres on Arizona account, Torres on Arizona. Koa Pete's coming in as a 5-star. He's got to play. Toby Awaka coming back. Krivas coming back. And then there's Henry Visar. And so to me, I think this is the sad part of the portal world, okay? So we're going to talk about Mo Diabate in a second, who went to Kentucky. Alabama just had to make some tough decisions of who are we bringing back, who are we going to have to let walk. And I think at Arizona, they basically said, we got Koa coming in, we got Awaka as that backup big guy, and we either got to go with Krivas or Visar at the 5. We can't go with both. There's not a spot on the floor for both of them, so they had to choose. So I don't know that they lost Henry Visar as much as it was just he was offered a huge bag from somebody else. They felt like the resources could be allocated better. They end up going in a different direction. KJ Lewis was good, but again, they're bringing in a McDonald's All-American and Braden Burries, who's going to start at the 2. So you're replacing 2 guys that were good for 2 McDonald's All-Americans, but here's the other part. They're bringing back 4 key players, 5 key players potentially off of a Sweet 16 team. Caleb Love is gone. The 2 portal guys are gone, but Jaden Bradley to me is going to be one of the best point guards in the Big 12 next year. So he's back. Braden Burries is going to start at the 2. We'll see on Carter Bryant, but Bradley's back, Toby Awaka's back, Krivas is back, and Del Orso's back. That's 4 key contributors plus 2 McDonald's All-Americans. There's not spots for everybody, especially if Carter Bryant comes back. Now, Carter Bryant has declared, we'll see what ends up happening, but to me, this is a simple, there's just not enough spots for the bodies that they were going to have. And so I actually tweeted this on Thursday night or Wednesday night or whenever they talked about this, is just because you didn't bring in a bunch of players in the portal doesn't mean that you're a portal loser. It means in Arizona's case that you have a really good team. As a matter of fact, if Carter Bryant comes back, I think that's a easy top 5 team in the country. So we'll see what happens there. But I saw what the guys said. Love those guys. I take no issue with what, everyone's allowed their opinions. I just fundamentally disagree with that one. All right. You know what opinion should be darn near universal? BYU Cougars. I don't want to say the BYU Cougars are back because they may have never left, baby. And they got actually 2 big pieces of news over the weekend I want to go ahead and dive into right now. And let's go ahead and talk. By the way, should mention the deadline to enter the NBA draft. In other words, if you want to enter the draft, even if you want to maintain your college eligibility, it was Saturday night at midnight Eastern. By the way, producer Matt, do me a favor when you get a second, monitor Twitter. Alex Caravan is the only player. We have no word from him if he's staying, if he's going, if he's entering, if he's whatever. We'll have to talk about that. But NBA draft deadline was Saturday night. And of the few big players that we did not get an announcement from, one of them was Richie Saunders. All Big 12 player at BYU this past season. Torres was Cougar crazy. We talked about BYU a lot. I thought they were one of the coolest stories in the sport. I went out for the BYU-Kansas game, got to see them all in person right as this team got going. They make their first Sweet 16 since 2011 with Jimmer Fredette, who recently retired. Well, I only bring it up to very simply say that BYU had, past tense, a chance to be really good, but it was all contingent on would Richie Saunders, all Big 12 first team member, 16.5 points per game, return to college basketball. Well, on Saturday night, I would say it was about 6 p.m. Pacific, so maybe 7 or so Mountain Time, somewhere in that neighborhood. Richie Saunders officially announced that he is returning to college basketball. And with that said, I think the conversation about BYU is very simple. Entering the 25-26 season, the BYU Cougars, people, are absolutely a national championship contender. It sounds crazy. Don't let it fool you. Torres is Cougar crazy. You should be too, because this team is loaded. Okay, by the way, Richie Saunders not the only news from the weekend. We'll get to that in a minute. First of all, Richie Saunders, if you're watching this show in late April, you love college basketball, and you know how good this kid was, okay? And actually, I think the stats are a little bit deceptive on how good he was late. He was a holdover from the Mark Pope era, Kevin Young. By the way, you could argue maybe outside Debansa, the biggest recruiting win for Kevin Young was keeping keeping your it was keeping the biggest sorry, I get tripped up there for a second. You could argue outside of AJ DeBonsa committing to BYU, the biggest recruiting win that Kevin Young has had at BYU is Richie Saunders, because Mark Pope wanted him bad. He actually, Richie Saunders, if you remember, went so far as to make a visit to Kentucky when Mark Pope took the job. Kevin Young convinces him to come back, and he was a rock star last year. As I said, 16.5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 43% three-point shooting. Let me say this. I think those stats are actually a little bit deceptive in terms of how good that he actually was. That sounds crazy. How can you say that? He's all Big 12 first team. It's because he got fundamentally better as the season went on. Yes, BYU lost to Alabama in the Sweet 16. It was because of Richie Saunders. 25 points in that game against Alabama. 25 points against Wisconsin in the round of 32. By the way, 3 of 4 from behind the three-point arc in that game. In the Big 12 tournament, 23 against a very good Iowa State team. Earlier in the season, 23 in that wild win at Iowa State, 26 at Arizona, 23 at Arizona, or 26 at Arizona State, 23 at Arizona, 22 at the game that I was at, Kansas. I don't have time to crunch the numbers. I would guess he averaged probably closer to about 20 points per game over about the final 10 to 12 games of the year, right as BYU got hot. So this kid is a bona fide All-American first-team candidate coming back next year. It's also worth noting, by the way, that on top of the fact that he's an All-American candidate coming back next year, he's a legitimate NBA draft prospect too. So that's why it's a big win. I think if he goes through the process, he is one of the 60 or so names that's called on draft night. Now, is he a first rounder? I don't know, but ultimately it does not matter because he's not testing. He's not doing anything. He is coming back, and this is huge for BYU. Should mention, by the way, before we get to why I believe they're a championship contender, they actually got a nice little portal commitment on Friday as well. A kid by the name of Kennard Davis Jr. from Southern Illinois. 6'6" wing. I'll say this. My boy Kevin Young certainly got a type. He likes those big, long, athletic wings that can shoot threes. KY, my man, you got a type. 16.5 points per game, 6'6" kid, 16.5 points per game, 38% three-point shooting. And what did I say about BYU earlier? It was never about finding superstars in the portal, although they got one in Rob Wright, who we'll talk about in a minute, but it was about finding pieces that fit with the infrastructure that was in place. And so when you factor in Saunders, when you factor in Kennard Davis, and you factor in the rest of this team, BYU's freaking stacked, and I think they're very much a title contender. What else do they have? Well, they obviously have the big dog, AJ DeBonsa. AJ DeBonsa, I'll tell you this. I went back and watched the Nike Hoop Summit game. I think there are times that I think even I've taken for granted how freaking good AJ DeBonsa is. 6'9", super athletic, plays crazy hard, both ends of the floor, competes, defends, which I think is a big thing. A lot of freshmen, they're just not going to do. And the thing I'll say is, listen, we all, and I include myself in this, we probably overhype some of these freshmen coming in. And you do think, you look at college basketball most years, it's really like 2 to 3 guys that are actually impact players in college, like major impact all-conference guys. Well, AJ DeBonsa is going to be one of them next year. Darren Peterson's good. Cam Boozer's good. Those guys will be great in their spots. Darren Peterson at Kansas, Cam Boozer at Duke. But AJ DeBonsa is going to be a star. This isn't a guy that's like, oh, is he actually overhyped or what? No. He is going to be a superstar for that team. And then you have Richie Saunders, who's going to be an All-American and NBA draft player. And I think the main key from this offseason, Rob Wright is another guy that I think could be an all Big 12 player. This was a kid that, of course, transferred from Baylor, was an all Big 12 freshman team performer last year. So I think that's a big part. This is a kid that has done it in the Big 12. This isn't a transfer from, no disrespect, but from the Mountain West or the A10 or the WAC or the Sun Belt or the whatever. This is a kid who has done it in the Big 12, 11.5 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 6.5 assists per game. And now he's going to do it with really good talent around him in an NBA system. I just think he's going to be a superstar. I think he's going to be a breakout star at BYU. You have Keba Keita coming back, the Incredible Hulk, 8 points, 8 boards per game. And I think low key, I think this Kennard Davis kid is actually a bigger deal than maybe we realize, because now if you assume that he's the 5th starter, if you assume that he's the last really big name that they're planning on bringing in, let's think about what that starting 5 looks like, okay? So you have Rob Wright at the 1, 6'3", 6'4", really good player. You have the next 3 guys are all switchable, are all interchangeable. Kennard Davis, 6'6", Richie Saunders, 6'5", 6'6", AJ DeBonsa, 6'8", 6'9". And those are all guys that essentially, in my opinion, can basically play like the 2 through the 4. So it's like you need Richie Saunders to be the 2. Richie Saunders is going to be the 2. You need him to be a 4 in a really small lineup. He could probably be a 4. They're all interchangeable defensively. I think in a worst case scenario, they could probably defend 2 through 4 easily. I think depending on who you're playing, you could put one of them on a 5 potentially if you're playing somebody that has like a 6'8" center. And then, in a pinch, they can handle the ball. They can defend. The point I'm trying to make, that starting 5 is sick because you have 3 guys that are totally interchangeable, 2 through 4. You have Rob Wright, who I think is going to be one of the best point guards in college basketball. Kay Bakeda, monster big man down low. And remember, they also have Xavier Staten off the bench. That is a true 7-footer, 7'1" kid out of Vegas who was a top 25 prospect that Michigan wanted, that I know UNLV wanted him, the hometown school. But I only bring it up because that is a stacked roster. And so when I look at this team, I'm here to tell you that Richie Saunders was after you got the DeBonsa commitment, Richie Saunders was clearly the most important piece. And we've talked about BYU, and we've been excited for BYU, and we've been excited about what it means. But I'll be real. Cougs fans, I hate to be this crass. None of it would have mattered if you don't get Richie Saunders back. Now, I don't think there was ever really a point where he was not going to return, but you get Richie Saunders back, and now, boy, oh boy, it's game on, man. It's game on. Listen, Big 12 is going to be great like it always is. Arizona's going to be good. Houston's going to be awesome. Iowa State's going to be awesome. Texas Tech is going to be awesome. Kansas is going to be pretty good. I know we're all a little down on Kansas, but BYU's as good as any of them, man. And I'm just so excited to watch this team. Are they in? Listen, I look at these rosters all day, every day in April and into May. This is easily a top 10 roster, probably in like the 4 to 6 range, much more than they are like the 8, 9, 10 range. And I'm here to tell you, this BYU team, you want to talk about a team that can make a Final Four, win a national championship. This team is that. I'm just here to tell you, they really are. They're that good. I think the other thing too, and I'll be quick because I'm going long on this topic, retention is so key. We get so excited about the portal stuff, the 5 stars. You have to have guys that know the system. Well, Richie Saunders is back. Kay Bakeda is back. I could be wrong. I think Dawson Baker might be back too. But you need those guys that have been in the system. BYU has one. I am so excited for the season ahead. Dawson Baker has eligibility. I don't think he hit the portal, so could have 3 or 4 key guys back if you include some of the freshmen that played a little bit last year. All right. There is one more topic. This is a little bit of a pseudo lighter one. I think it's a little bit lighter. I don't know. Do we think it's lighter? Let's go ahead and break it down because let's talk about the final topic of the day. Final topic of the day. So Thursday, Friday was all NFL draft stuff. I mean, everybody, whether you like football or not, you're locked in on the draft. Okay. And so I missed this story in real time, but I want to talk a little bit about it because there was this story that came about of like, that Kentucky spent okay, backdrop. Portal season, there's all sorts of rumors, innuendo, but rosters are largely starting to get finalized. And so there's been this conversation of, well, how much is everybody spending? And so there was this report out of nowhere. It was like, Kentucky actually spent the most, and it was actually pretty close to $20 million. And why that's crazy, besides the fact $20 million for a basketball roster is insane, but 2, Matt Norlander from CBS Sports put out a report about 2 weeks ago where he basically said, look, to be a top end college team, you're going to have to spend at least $10 million. And he listed a bunch of schools, Louisville, Kentucky, BYU, Arkansas, etc. They're spending at least 10. We know that. So 20 is double that. So it was a story that got everybody's attention. I know Matt Jones, Kentucky Sports Radio, talked about it. How about this? Producer Matt, who was the prominent coach who decided to weigh in? Rick Pitino, who's got an opinion on everything, weighed in, tweeting, I love the exaggerations of what people are spending on NIL. That was on Friday about about noon Eastern time. So when the story gets to Rick Pitino in beautiful Queens of New York, it's a big story. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let's talk about this. Is it true? Is it not? What's fact? What's fiction? First of all, I'll say this. Finally got a chance to look at it once the draft started to wind down over the last day or so. The guy who broke the story, producer Matt, you can put up the tweet. It is my buddy David Sisk from Rivals. Okay, so this is the tweet that I think got everybody going on social media. It was another account tweeting David Sisk's information. Per David Sisk, and this was with Rylan Griffin, I guess. I'm told that it's still on for now. This was the recruitment of Rylan Griffin. It may not be out of the question to get both. This was Rylan Griffin and Denzel Aberdeen. The same individual told me that the talk around agency and GM circles is that Kentucky could spend as much as $20 million on NIL. So it was an interesting thing because I know David. I like David. First of all, let me say this. David Sisk, if you know him, he is the last person to ever put anything out for the sake of putting stuff out. He doesn't care about clicks. He doesn't care about engagement. He is a great A++ basketball reporter. The fact that somebody pulled it off a message board tells you what you need to know. This was not a tweet that David Sisk put out. This was even in an article that he put out. He posted it on a message board, and it's his obligation to bring information to his followers and his subscribers. And so David Sisk is not the type that's going to say, just stuff for the sake of saying it. So the question becomes, is it 20 million and how close? And before we get into that, let me also give one caveat. I want to say this. So Kentucky fans, I'm going to defend you, but I would defend anybody if it was their school. I don't really care how much anybody spends in NIL. Okay. I want to make that clear. Bottom line is this. If you can raise the money and someone's willing to write the check, spend what you got to spend. I am not an NIL peeper. I don't want to know what your team's spending. I don't really care. If UConn was spending 20, if St. John spends 20, if Auburn spends 20, I don't care. If you can convince somebody to give you the money, go ahead and spend it. And what I would also say too, what I was thinking about really quick, and we're going to get into Kentucky specifically. Like this whole thing about, if Kentucky has 20 million, it's like, here's what I was thinking. Kentucky is really good in this NIL era. So is North Carolina. So is UConn. So is Arizona. So is the team coached by Rick Pitino. You know who else was good in the pre-NIL era? Kentucky, Arizona, North Carolina, Duke, UConn, wherever Rick Pitino was coaching. So like NIL, I don't want to say it makes no difference, but to me, the teams that are really good are still the same as they were in pre-NIL. And now the money that used to go into a new facility or into this or into that, it's now just going to the players. So I don't really care how much anybody's spending. I don't think it's really changed the top of college basketball all that much. The same teams are still good. But do I think the number is $20 million? I'll tell you, I don't know if it's 20. I do think it's pretty close, though, because I was thinking about this. First of all, I mentioned the Norlander article about that the top teams are spending at least $10 million, okay? And I think that number, I think it's very accurate, okay? And I think 10 million sounds crazy, but I think just based on some of the information that we know, you look at some of these rosters, you can get well past 10 million really quick. I'll just give you an example. We'll just use BYU. And I love BYU. We just talked about them 2 seconds ago. And by the way, I don't care what BYU spent, just like I don't care what UConn spent, just like I don't care what Kentucky spent. But BYU, we all heard the AJ DeBonsa rumors when he was being recruited. How much did he actually make? Was it 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 million? There was crazy numbers out there. What I believe the number is from BYU is about $4 to $4.5 million. Okay. By the way, I was told BYU by multiple people was not the highest bidder for AJ DeBonsa. He did not just go to the highest bidder. But if it's $4.5 million, now you start doing the math with Richie Saunders. Well, Richie Saunders ain't coming back for free. He's an All-American, Big 12, first team. He's probably at 3. We know Rob Wright was at like that $2.5 to $3 million range. I think the Rob Wright number was a little bit inflated, but I mean, if AJ got 4.5 and Richie got 3 and Rob Wright got 2.5, I'm not great at math. That comes out to $10 million for 3 players really quick. Okay. So now all of a sudden you got to backfill a roster. You can get to 12, 13, 14, $15 million really quickly. Arkansas, by the way, we don't have final numbers, but 3 prominent returnees, 2 5-star recruits, 1 international player who needs to be paid a buyout. And who am I missing? Oh, Carter Knox could come back. Two portal kids too. They have 9, 10 guys that can play. even without Carter Knox, that's probably a $10 million budget. You add Carter Knox and you're getting over $10 million really quick. So this isn't a segment about everybody else. Let's talk Kentucky. Do I think the number is 20? No, but I think it's pretty close, probably somewhere. I think they're one of the highest bidders because what we do, there are a couple pieces of information that we do know about Kentucky that like kind of set the tone for probably how much they spent. What do we know? Well, we know Denzel Aberdeen, who just committed last week, left Florida because Kentucky was essentially willing to double his salary. That is public information reported by Kentucky writers that basically Denzel Aberdeen was going to get $1 million from Florida. Kentucky offered him $2 million, and he's like, dude, I love my home state school. It was fun winning a natty, but if Kentucky's going to double my offer, then I got to go to Kentucky and take advantage of that. Jasper Johnson, the 5-star. I remember being told during the recruitment, the number from the other schools was at about 1.3, 1.4, and that Kentucky at first didn't feel like they could match it. And then the Kentucky boosters were like, do not let a 5-star get out of the state of Kentucky if you think he's good enough. So he's probably making like 1.5, 1 to 1.5 easily, I would say. And by the way, maybe getting a little bit of a hometown bump. Good for him. Deserves it. I have no issue with it. Mo Diabate. I mentioned it earlier. Alabama wanted him back, but he was looking for a number that was not in line with what Alabama could give. Alabama had to make a tough decision, just basically said, we don't have money to pay everybody. We're going to have to let you go. I think he thought he was a 7-figure player. We can argue, is that dumb? Is it crazy? Listen, this is the world we live in. If that's the going rate, then that's the going rate. So if he made 1.5 and then Jasper made 1.5, that's 3 right there. Then you add in Denzel Aberdeen, that's 5. By the way, Otega Owe, we know publicly it's been stated that teams tampered like crazy to get him in the portal. We're willing to make him one of the highest paid players. So if he comes back, that's like 3.5 right there. That's like $8 million just for 4 players. And you know who it doesn't include? Doesn't include maybe the best big guy in the portal in Jaden Quaintance. He ain't coming at a discount, even though I was told he too took less money to go to Kentucky than to some other schools. Does not include a starting point guard. That was very costly. Doesn't include McDonald's All-American Malachi Moreno. That wasn't cheap. Doesn't include Cam Williams, who came from Tulane. That wasn't cheap. Doesn't include, by the way, the European player who you probably had to buy out of a contract. That wasn't cheap. And so I just bring it up because all the money adds up quick. And so what I'll say is about that. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention Brandon Garrison. Brandon Garrison could be like an all-SEC 5-man next year. And there would have been a big hole in your roster if you didn't pay him. I think it's interesting with Brandon Garrison. It looked like he was going to go in the portal for a second. And I think we've seen with a lot of these teams is that they're kind of overpaying the guys from outside the program, and the guys in the program are getting pissed. It's why Chad Baker-Mazara left Auburn. It's why Denzel Aberdeen left Florida. He's like, dude, you're paying this new guy $3 million and I'm getting $1 million. I'm out. So whatever Jaden Quaintance is getting, Brandon Garrison probably had to be in that ballpark as well. So again, I want to be abundantly clear. I don't really care what Kentucky spent. Spend the money if you can raise it. But I do think it was probably well north of $10 million. And I do think it was, if you start doing the math, like I said, I came to $8 million pretty quick for 4 players. And it wasn't the starting point guard, the starting center, probably the starting 4-man. You could do the math from there. Kentucky spent a lot of money, but hey, that's okay. All right, before we get out of here, producer Matt, any questions, any comments, anything interesting from the chat, or is it all just, by the way, banter? Jeremy says it. I'm with you. Jeremy, we're speaking the same language, brother. Let's spend somebody else's money. Who cares? I'm with you. Jeremy. Hey, it's like, you go to the bar, somebody says, I'm buying drinks for everybody tonight. You don't start, asking questions. You just say, I'll take a Tito's soda, baby. Get me a mojito. Get me a bucket of whatever you're drinking. Get me a pitcher of that. I'm with you. It's somebody else's money. I don't care. And by the way, like I said, it's at every school in America. Every school in America is. And by the way, here's the other thing. And it really frustrates me because there are a lot of great reporters who cover college basketball. Nobody is getting this story right. The numbers are so high, partly because of the house settlement, but I keep going back to there were so many rosters that were built around 5th and 6th year guys this year. Kentucky, Auburn, Ole Miss, Tennessee, St. John's, on and on and on and on and on. And there just aren't enough good players in the portal. The supply is greatly diminished from the demand because there's no 5th-year players. That's why the numbers are so high. I think the mark sort of corrects itself as time goes on. But right now it is crazy in these streets. Do I think Kentucky paid $20 million? Probably not. Do I think they paid one of the 2 or 3 highest price tags for their roster? Yeah, I do. Producer Matt, anything else before we get out of here, or is that pretty much it? All right. That's it. Then we'll go ahead and get out of here. A couple things. One, if you're not subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts, go ahead and make sure to subscribe. We mentioned we are starting a membership group. The special perks, you're going to get private chats, private group stuff. It sounded weird, but whatever, you get the point. Now I'm flustered. You're going to get free merch, all of that. All you got to do, YouTube member join. All you got to do is click that little join button. And yeah, the more people we sign up, like I said, the more people that sign up, guess what? The more cool stuff we get to do. We get to go on the road more. We get to go to games more. Everybody's, oh, Torres, when are you going to come to Lexington? Torres, when are you going to come to stores? It's like, it ain't cheap, people. And we're doing our best here. Like I said, no corporate backing. I don't get to write all this off to CBS or to ESPN or to Yahoo or whatever. So if you want to support the show, it's $4.99 a month. It's basically the equivalent of a Starbucks coffee a month. And we really do appreciate it if you can. By the way, any advertisers, if you own a company, big business, we got this TV behind me, and we are selling that ad space. If you want your logo, by the way, show reached well over 1 million people since the start of March. So you do the math. We're at over 2 million for the 2025 calendar year. People, you want to be part of this. We are a train. We are a monster. We are growing quick. All right. If you're not subscribed, make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, etc. Make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All for today's show. Probably be back on Tuesday night, I think is probably the safe bet. But, we're going to rock and roll, and it's going to be awesome. Thank you all for your support of the show. Again, the numbers have been insane for the month of March, month of April, really all of 2020. We've basically had growth every month, year over year. It's incredible. So thank you all for that. I'm going to get out of here. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-Ed. Unblock me, bro. We will be back probably Tuesday night. New episode, Aaron Torres Pod.